Have you ever asked your parents about some significant event from your childhood that you remember clearly, only to have them flatly deny it ever happened? How about a story you told someone who you hadn't seen in a decade? If asked to recount your story, there's a good chance they remember what you told them differently. Who is wrong in these situations? Are your parents living in denial? Could it be they're just denying it to assuage their own guilty conscience? Did your friend remember your story wrong, or did you tell it that much differently 10 years ago? The real answers to these questions are a lot more nuanced than you might initially believe. In fact, the chances are strong that all of you are wrong. You, your parents, and that friend. I'm sure many of you want to ask, how can everyone be wrong? The answer wouldn't make much sense right now, but after this series of videos, you will better understand what your memory is, what you can trust, and why we all have a nice, large store of false memories. In the next few minutes, we'll talk about what memory is and how our brains take in new information. Then, in this and the next part of the series, we'll learn why your mind is unreliable. And finally, we'll discuss the overwhelmingly important concept of false memories and how they have an outsized impact on everyday life. As always, there are chapters in the description below that will let you skip to any section you want. If you're new here at the Xennial Philosopher, welcome. I hope you'll come back to my channel so you can continue to expand your mind alongside me. I need to warn you, this is a difficult journey. Our brains are full of safety mechanisms that keep us happy and oblivious. People do more unconsciously in a second than they could do in a whole day consciously. But our brains are very good at making us believe that we're in charge. This is why people so vehemently stick to beliefs and concepts that make little sense to outsiders. This is precisely why it is so critical to understand what perception is. But I can't claim it will be easy. What is memory? Really? We need to have a firm understanding of memory to begin with. As defined in the medical dictionary, memory has a few definitions. 1. The ability to recover information about past events or knowledge. 2. The process of recovering information about past events or knowledge. There is a third designation, cognitive reconstruction, wherein the brain engages in a remarkable reshuffling process in an attempt to extract what is general and what is particular about each passing moment. The first two definitions are straightforward and make sense on the surface. The last one, cognitive reconstruction, is a little more complex. And when we talk about why memory is so unreliable in the next video, this will be covered. But before we do that, let's look at the types of memory scientists believe humans have. According to the National Institute of Health's National Library of Medicine, there are 3 officially recognized types of memory: long-term memory, short-term memory, and working memory. I was only taught about short-term and long-term memory in my primary education, so before we barrel on, let's quickly look at these 3 types of memory. Now, I am not a doctor, nor am I claiming that any of this won't change in the future as we learn more about ourselves. So I will once again provide these explanations with the assistance of the NIH's Library of Medicine website. Short-term memory. Short-term memory appears to be primarily defined by its critical differences from long-term memory. One difference is what doctors call temporal decay, or just that these kinds of memories fade over a short period of time. The second defining feature of short-term memory appears to be chunk capacity limits, which is doctor speak for limited storage space. In other words, there's only so much information that can be stored in short-term memory at any given time. Long-term memory. Like its partner, long-term memory is defined by its differences from short-term memory. So it stands to reason that this type of memory is longer lived and doesn't suffer temporal limitations like short-term memory. There also doesn't seem to be limited space or chunk capacity limits, so a new long-term memory isn't going to push out or overwrite the older ones. Like having an unlimited cloud storage device, I guess. Working memory. From what I could find, working memory is a newer definition that scientists added to the list as their understanding of how our brains work expands. Working memory appears to be primarily a way for our brains to utilize short-term memory and apply it to cognitive tasks, as well as a way for us to hold and manipulate information within our short-term memories. Basically, it is our use of focus or attention to manage and utilize our short-term memories for something that we're doing. Sticking with the computer-based analogies, working memory seems to be like RAM, while short-term memory itself is more like a temp file or a page file on your disk. As with any of the subjects discussed in the Xennial Philosopher, I'm only scratching the surface. There are links in the description to sources if you want to dig deeper into clinical definitions and explanations of memory. Why is memory so unreliable? At this point, I think we've done enough foundational work to move on to the part that got you here and what prompted me to make these videos. Why is your memory untrustworthy? And what can we do about it? Perspective. Believe it or not, perspective is easily the most important thing you will consider today, or maybe even in your entire life. Whether you believe me or not, you will have to consider perspective to understand memories and why they aren't as indelible as they seem. Perspective is directly related to one of Einstein's greatest theories, which I also happen to think is the coolest one, and that is relativity. I know about half of you got a glazed over look in your eyes as soon as I said the word relativity, but don't worry, this is not going to be a physics lesson. The part we care about is that relativity is just an expression of an object in relation to another. For example, if car A goes 25 miles per hour and car B down the street is going 35 miles per hour in the same direction, anyone in car A will see car B as going 10 miles per hour. Anyone in car B will see car A as technically moving backwards from their perspective. Now, I bet a bunch of you are rolling your eyes. This is either super obvious or you don't see why it matters. It matters because perspective is just a more abstract version of relativity. If two people, we'll call them Joe and Amy, are watching a concert, but Joe is seated way in the back in the worst seat in the house, while Amy not only has front row seats, she's also wearing a gleaming backstage VIP pass. If you were to ask Joe and Amy to describe their experiences at the exact same concert, you would almost certainly get vastly different stories. Joe might say the sound was only okay and that he was not happy to have to spend $19 on each beer, especially after waiting in line for it, not to mention the restroom line. Joe might also say that everyone around him was loud and talking during the music and that he eventually got frustrated and left the show early. Overall, Joe had a negative experience. Now, Amy would likely have a vastly different memory of this concert. She was in the very front. Even if people were talking, Amy wouldn't have heard it. Since she had VIP tickets, she had access to a separate restroom and vending area, so she wouldn't even mention lines and probably didn't care about high prices. She would probably tell you it was the best concert she'd ever been to, going on about how she got to meet the band and had her t-shirt signed. As you can see, Amy had a very positive experience. Both Joe and Amy were at the same event, but they experienced it very differently. Think about this next time you get into an argument with someone. Maybe you are both right. From your unique perspectives, it is entirely possible that you are both equally right or wrong. And if you're willing to consider another perspective, you might not be so upset, or you might become, dare I say it, empathetic. I also want to note that perception is another essential aspect to consider, but it ties in well enough with perspective that we can gloss over it in this video. But don't worry, I have one on my list about perception and perspective, so keep an eye on the channel for that to drop. Bias. Our unique perspectives, perceptions of the world, and experiences all conspire together to create a very powerful aspect of how our minds work called bias. Bias is a big part of why people disagree. Bias is why humans fight wars. With every experience and memory we create, we are adding to our mind's ability to judge. Before you get defensive, know this: we all do it. No matter what you think or how much you disagree with me, you judge, I judge, every person judges every other person every second of every day since the beginning of human existence. We are all biased. Even the most enlightened person you know is biased. It is so ingrained in our core selves that we simply cannot be anything else. Each and every one of you clicked on this video with some preconceived notion of what you expected. Maybe you saw the thumbnail or the title drew you in. Maybe you saw another video about memory and it intrigued you. Maybe you think I'm crazy and want to prove me wrong and blast me in the comments. Please take a moment and consider your own bias about this video. What convinced you to click the thumbnail to begin this video? Do you have some strong opinions on how my voice sounds? Maybe this topic is just something you want to learn about. In the end, it's equally as likely that you clicked out of some kind of angry curiosity as that you simply wanted to learn something new. The entirety of how we feel about people, situations, risks, decisions, ourselves, and others is directly linked to these biases, which are heavily influenced by our emotions. Everything that's happened to you before any given moment in your life will shape how you experience that instant. Your past profoundly informs your present and creates a powerful sense of bias in all of us. Some people are better at stopping and considering other perspectives, but even they are ultimately ruled by their biases. There is just no escaping it. But knowing that bias exists and actively considering it is a big step towards enlightenment that too many people ignore. Bias appears to be, as best as scientists can tell, the method by which our minds have evolved to deal with the world. Consider this. At any given moment, every person on Earth receives a myriad of sensory information, more data than a computer could process, and certainly more than people could fathom or even imagine. Because of this, our minds handle the vast majority of data independently of our conscious mind. We don't know about everything going on. Thankfully, we're not inundated and overwhelmed all the time. This is only possible because our minds have evolved a mechanism to help us stay sane, not trusting us. There you go. Now you know that your brain doesn't trust you. Maybe it's time you stop trusting your brain so much. Think of the times you watch someone proceed to make an ill-advised decision despite all the evidence and warnings to the contrary. We've all seen it. In fact, if you want to use your own 20/20 hindsight, I'm sure you also have some instances in your own past where you've done something that you know was monumentally foolish. Chances are good you'll make another unwise choice any minute now. What it comes down to is that we can look ahead and decide to make the right choice, or we can look back and see what the better option could have been. But due to the nature of our minds, we are mostly incapable of seeing these seemingly obvious problems when we are in the moment. How do you deal with others who refuse to see reason? Do you think there's a way for us to consistently make good choices? There is a lot more to discuss. Next, we need to talk about the stories we tell ourselves and the way our brain constantly tricks us into believing we are in charge, when in fact, we have far less control than we think we do. In the next part of this series, we'll talk about the science behind false memories and the immense impact they have on society as a whole. Hopefully you see that memories are not the indelible pieces of history we imagine them as. So, next time someone challenges your recall of an event, remember you weren't the only one there, and not everyone saw or experienced the same things. Maybe before you disagree with someone or get into a heated argument, you should consider their perspective. If you're willing to accept that your memories and viewpoints are not the only ones in the world, it can only make your interactions and relationships better. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. I sincerely hope you learned something here and will be even happier if you gained a new perspective on other human beings. I truly believe that if more people considered other perspectives and accepted that they're equally as likely to be wrong, then the world could truly be a better place for everyone. What did you think about these concepts? Do you plan to learn more from the resources below? Did you hear something today you'd like me to do a full video on? Let me know in the comments. And if your interest has been piqued by any of the subjects covered here at the Xennial Philosopher, make sure you check out the references and links to related videos and articles in the description. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, don't forget to so you won't miss out on new videos to expand your mind and grow your perception.